Well, now you've heard from a lot of folks that are out in the field, literally. So now get your questions ready. Final wrap up. So think about everything that's been discussed through the course of the day, tie it all together this afternoon. And again, like we said, I just have I'm just curious, this is just me. Before this panel, had you three all met?
Nope.
That's part of the reason why it's kind of cool to have this kind of a forum. Because I'll bet that now that they've seen how one another presents, that there's going to be some inspired conversations or at least follow-ups. So that is what this is all about. I'm just curious. I don't want to single it out, but since nobody else is running to the podium. So now that you have had a little exposure to these systems and the way they're doing things, do you feel better, Mike, about those possibilities?
I knew you were going to come to me. Look, no, I mean, there's so much good stuff happening, no question. And the thing that's unique about the way that they're approaching it is, I think, similar to the way that I was talking about the ethos, right? That it's at the center of what they're doing to think about. The thing that I care most about, water protection, but there's a lot there that's central to the way that they're farming. The challenge, I think, is to turn that into the standard, right? For it to be not a unique thing, right, that you invite people to a forum because they're so outstanding, but this is a thing that everybody does, not just because they think it's important, but because they have to in order to be successful. Mm-hmm. Right? And we're not there yet, but we can get there. But this is how you do it. I mean,
yeah. Go ahead.
So, Jeff, I have a question for you. I work with watershed councils myself, and just a couple questions about how you structured yours. Maybe if you would share a little bit about why you decided to go with structuring yours as a nonprofit first, and then I have another question too about your funding.
The reason we structured one to a nonprofit was that allows us to bring money in and back out without showing a profit. It also makes it much easier to apply for grants. And pretty much all your grants that are funding these conservation groups are pretty much on the form of with nonprofits.
Sure. I'm sorry, I didn't clarify. Rather than utilizing maybe your county land and water or another like localized group as kind of your nonprofit umbrella, or being that just that organization that distributes your funding.
Could you speak up?
Got to say it again.
Yeah.
Pull the mask down and just kick it.
Rather than using a local organization to be that that group that distributes your funding. So you decided to go as your own nonprofit. We see a lot of watersheds collaborating with Land and Waters or other local nonprofits. So I guess why did you decide to kind of go off on your own and create a nonprofit?
We wanted our own identity. We felt that if you're truly farmer-led, you want to be led by farmers, and not necessarily another group or another agency.
Okay.
Or level of agency.
Sure.
Well, and remember, I remember this well, because they were the first in the pool. And I remember when that crew was getting together just as a foursome to discuss the possibilities. When you're in Dane County, you need to watch your P's and Q's when you're going into a voluntary. It could have failed. There could have been a boo-boo, and then the pressure would have been heavy. So they decided they really wanted to always be their own voice and not be beholden to anybody else. They partner with a lot of different entities and that kind of stuff, but the independence and being able to call their own shots definitely dictated whether the formal business arrangement or just the way they wanted to get things going.
Great, thanks for that clarification, Pam. And I noticed through your slides too, there was some pretty significant cost share in through the cover crops and the manure application. Do you mind maybe kind of sharing some of those sources? 'Cause that seems to be pretty substantial relative to a lot of the other watersheds throughout the state. If you wouldn't mind kind of sharing some of that.
So we have a unique situation down here in the Yahara. Madison Metropolitan Sewer District is part of adaptive management program called Yahara Wins, where they can offset bricks and mortar updates to their sewer plant by doing phosphorus reduction upstream. So they're funding things to be put on the farmland as well as municipalities, and getting credit for that money that they're spending there against their permit. So yes, we have a unique situation here because we have those folks working close with us. But even with that said, we both were starting out at the same time, right? So this adaptive management rule came into play shortly after we organized. It seemed to be a good fit. We both had the same interests. So now we've kind of outgrew that effort. You know, their funding level is froze, and we've got probably more. Well, we do. We have more interest in our conservation practice than we do have funding, and more farmers. And we haven't even started going out and engaging farmers one-on-one. We send them a cost share, a couple letters a year, and have a conference once a year. We send them a postcard to sign up for these practices. They throw it in the mailbox, and then next time we talk to them or deal with it is when they hand in their nutrient management plan for us to quantify the changes. So just think if we could get out and engage with them on the farm, how far we could go if we had the funding. We got a good model. We just need to build it out.
Yep. Everybody getting tired? Oh, there goes Paul.
Jeff, could you, well, actually, maybe Jeremy, actually any of you, I'm kind of curious about the producer-led watershed groups. If you think, are there ways to make them better? Or do you think they are working as well as they could? Or is there some, you know, it's like any organization, there's a room for improvement. It's been around for like 7-8 years now. Just any idea, given your experience, Jeff, particularly with the group, what would you change as you see new ones coming on?
I would like to see a little bit more of a link between private sector and private business to be involved directly with the watershed. We're actually in the business, believe it or not, to feed people. We're not farming for the fun of it. We're farming to feed you folks. We had a nice dinner. We had plenty to eat over there, more than what we could consume today. We do it to feed people. So we need to engage people and help them understand the food chain. We interact with the soil and the land, Jeremy and I, to feed people. Because we interact with the soil and the water, there's pollution to a degree. So how can we minimize that? And I think we have to understand that if we want clean water and both surface and groundwater, we need to link the whole process of the food chain, and that includes the consumer. That's why we're on the beginning of the food chain with Yahara Pride, and our biggest partner is on the end of the food chain, and that's the sewer plant. Everything that we touch, all that nutrients we work with is the nutrients that is going to be converted or used by the public to so they can live. And at the end of the day, when you dispose of that nutrients, it's got to go back out on the land. And it's a complete cycle. So that's why if we can get people to understand what we're doing a little bit more and understand that water quality is just one part of that big circle. And it's a challenge because everybody else, other than the farmer, is working in a controlled environment. Ours is uncontrollable. We can just manage it to the degree that we best see fit for that particular farm or that particular field. And we constantly press forward with new ideas and technologies to do it better, while the environment and the climate is changing.
Sorry, I just want to add, because I think it's an important question too. So there's two practical things that I think will make for the evolution of this program, which has been pretty successful. The first is, I think, finding more ways to include other watershed groups that exist, non-farm groups into them, so that we have true watershed, diverse watershed groups that are working at a larger scale than just the farm groups. That's a really important place to start. We need that broadness. And the reason that we need it is that ultimately I think that it's important for the producer-led groups to be able to advocate for themselves, for the things that they want more broadly. They have to be able to, because eventually people will come to them and say, what do you want? What do you want from us as legislators or policymakers? What do you want from us? What do you want from us? And you got to have an answer. So that, like, getting ready for that, I think is really important. Having a good answer to that is really important. So yeah, I think that'll be. And just as an example, like there was the NR151 rule update that fizzled this year. I think a lot of the stuff in that would have been actually pretty good for a lot of the people who were, because it favored cover crops, and it gave the state a way to hand out incentive money for that stuff. I think if there was more understanding of that, then a lot of the groups would have stood up and said, actually, we support this, but they weren't in a position to do that. So the future evolution of that, I think, is more presence.
So we're still pretty new to the watershed groups. Don't have enough experience to say what can be improved, what can't be improved. So far, it's been a great process. I will joke around a couple things. First off, NR151, I don't think anybody thinks that cover crops and those types of things were bad. There was just other flaws in it, extravagant ones, other revisions. We got to be careful, because now all of a sudden you're taking full responsibility for what comes out of everybody, so, which is true. But
Carl?
Yeah, I guess I'm curious, what do you see as the biggest barriers, and here we're at a world-class university. What can the university do to help meet those? I mean, you talked a bit about cover crops, obviously work with Heidi on that. What do you see as the future barriers, maybe to help us think about where do we invest, how do we support these efforts across the state?
I don't care.
I think it's a very good start that we have the group this division that was created by, is it John? That's a good start to engage with the farmers and the farmer-led initiatives that are going on. I'll give you a little personal thing, not on our farm. I've been working 6 years with composting, and I've been talking with university officials about trying to do some trials and things to answer some of the questions and help figure out the economics of it and so forth. I haven't had any success. And I've got a plot going right now off my farm that was done by Extension, Dane County Extension, with a farmer and MMSD. So Dane County Extension, farmer, MMSD, a small plot, small dollars. They hand spread the compost this fall with an idea of following it through the crop year next year on a small plot. That's all the farther we've gotten with it in 6 years. So yeah, we gotta tighten this up. We gotta have direct communication on what's going on and where do we need help. We may have the technology right in front of us, but we have no way of proving it. And I think that's risky.
So first off, I'd like to say that there's a ton of things that the university does fantastic. I mean, there's great readers, great researchers when it comes down to the economics. One thing that I think faces the university, as well as I think it faces the university as well as public office, if you will, is how can you move fast enough to keep up with the speed of technology and the speed of the farms and making sure that you have the current information? Like somebody brought up, is the most current information on yields and varieties and those types of things being utilized? And that's really important because, I mean, this stuff is changing like that. I mean, we're essentially replacing 80% of our varieties probably every 7 years, and coming out with different ones. So, is that keeping up with what the different practices are? And is the information, match it from an overall consumption if there is leaching, nutrient utilization, and those types of things. So getting that as tight as possible, I think is, really, really important. But that would be one of the biggest challenges. Again, I mean, just keeping up with it. It's the same thing with any regulatory issue. Are you keeping up with the times? And that is consistently going to get harder and harder because technology and agriculture and all of these things are evolving faster and faster. I mean, if you can imagine what got done in 5 years, my great-grandfather would, think it would never happen. So, and that's going to move to 4 years, 3 years, 2 years. I mean, in 30 years, I mean, stuff is just going to be warp speed for the pace of change, even more than it is now. So something that we always got to keep in the forefront of our minds, and how do we make sure that everything else moves as fast as these things are moving?
I'm going to ask, were you going to speak? Don't want to get ahead of you, Mike, if you had something you wanted to say. I'm just curious, to Jeff's point and to what we all know in this room, what kind of interaction have you had with food suppliers? Now, Jeremy, you're on the front line, so your conversations may be more happening on a more regular basis. My point being, I agree. The end user, the ones that are marketing and have a margin on what you're producing, should be part of the conversation because, as we're all hearing, they will ultimately be coming back to the farm demanding certain standards be met. So who in this audience represents grocery stores, food processors, food companies? And if I don't hear a word, have you guys talked to those people? Like I said, Jeremy, I know you're more direct, but I guess that's one of my points maybe too, Paul, is they ought to be in the room, because what we're hearing in agriculture is they're going to start dictating what standards they want met, be it animal agriculture or be it fruits and vegetables. Just wondering if, like I said, Jeremy, you're in the direct line of food production. Jeff, maybe a little bit step back, but given your geographic proximity, I'm sure there's plenty that would be curious to engage in the conversation. We got 10 minutes. Come on, boys. I can't ask them to roll the beer out any earlier.
All right. Well, I got elected to the Farmers for Sustainable Food on the board of directors at Dairy Strong, so I'm going to probably be involved a little closer with it. But our milk company right now is passing down things that we are doing on the farm as far as animal health and welfare, worker welfare, questions about nutrient management, things that are happening in the field. And it's like, that's coming from someone above them. And I think that's a real challenge moving forward is, the folks that are we can't expect this to be all handled at the farm level. Margins are small. I mean, I'd like to say we're going to change the landscape of agriculture, and we're going to do things different, and we're going to get more money for our food. But did you see up on earlier this morning that like 15% of certain products or dairy products are exported? Mm-hmm. We have a 2% swing in the market, and milk can go from $20 $100 to $13. Mm-hmm. So it's pretty vulnerable. So we need, the supply chain needs to understand what they're asking us to do, and is it realistic in a lot of forms. And unfortunately, we've got people on these board of directors of these big companies that are out of touch with agriculture, and they're doing the trendy things. They love the word sustainable and all the things that go with it. So we need to engage them, yes.
From my standpoint, I think that a lot of the customers, at least in the potato and vegetable industry, are definitely looking at this and taking it seriously. Every single one of my customers has certain goals that they want to meet for certain time frames, both from a water quality or water quantity, quality when it comes down to carbon, overall reductions in those by certain times. Every single year we go through a full, analysis on how much carbon is the farm producing, looking at fertilizer, looking at fuel usage, electricity. Same thing, there's a sustainability audit, how much water are you utilizing? Potato industry also has what's called the Potato Sustainability Alliance, which is really focused specifically on that. It is a huge issue, not just for, it's a huge issue for the whole potato industry, and we're taking it very seriously. Obviously, potatoes utilize, a lot of fertilizers and other input costs, water. And I'd say we've been progressive for quite some time and have a lot of improvement to make still. It's a continuum. It's it's something that's going to take forever. We're always going to continue to improve, but a lot of that is coming from consumers. A lot of it's coming also from NATO, not NATO. Slipping my mind now. Yeah, I think it's. Anyways, the world goals, on where are we going to have scarce resources and that, and really pushing it. I apologize, it's not coming to my mind right now. But those things are important. And whether we agree with it or not, the specific term or what the cause and all of that, weather here is changing a little bit, and what can we do to mitigate that? So it's looking at all these things together again as a whole. And I think, the whole, if it hasn't happened already, in certain segments of agriculture, it will be happening soon where, the consumers are also talking about a lot of this, and driving some of it.
Well, it has been a full day, to say the least. Let's give a round of applause to the three speakers that have shared their stories up here today. I just want to remind you again to thank any of the sponsors that have helped to make this happen. It takes their participation to get the dialogue started and keep it going. Don't forget that they are going to have all this material online, either, if not immediately, within the next, 24, 48 hours, hey, Jeremy? And so if there's somebody that wasn't here, if there's a stakeholder that should have heard some of these presentations, grab that link and share it around. That's why they do it. It's not just a one-and-done consumption situation when it comes to this information. And maybe as you're driving home today, it'll inspire some ideas that you want Paul and the Rank Agribusiness Institute to follow up on for next year, because I'm sincerely hoping that by next year I can get rid of this fuzzy thing on my face and engage with everybody in a physical way so I recognize you instead of just a name badge. So again, our thanks to the speakers, everybody that participated today. That is the conclusion of the 2022 UW Ag Outlook Forum. Again, like we said, the reception is going to be starting in a few minutes to the right, over that way. And obviously, in the meantime, I think that there's probably plenty of one-on-one conversations that can be happening while they're getting set up. So again, appreciate your participation and staying with us through the course of the day. Thank you to all the speakers. I'm Pam Yankee. Have a good afternoon.